Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather, 12th day of December 2021. I'm David Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Let's see, first graphic, hazardous weather graphic, showing a winter weather advisory, yellow shaded area up there surrounding the Kaktovik location, eastern Beaufort Sea coast. That's out until midnight tonight for west winds gusting 45 miles an hour. Creating blowing snow that reduces visibility to a quarter mile or less, continuing through the day today. That'll continue till about midnight tonight, and then the winds will drop off. And down to the south, you can see the red illuminated areas there, the forecast zones. Nunivak Island, Kuskokwim Delta. That's a blizzard warning that's out, let's see, until, or for Monday, for the day Monday, tomorrow. And that's mostly for the coastal areas there, looking at maybe an inch of snow, winds gusting 35 miles an hour, reduced visibilities in blowing snow in the windy areas there to a quarter mile or less at times. And then for the Bristol Bay zone, blizzard warning out for the entire area there. And that's same time frame tomorrow into tomorrow evening. And that's for, again, winds kicking up to about 35 miles an hour. And could see up to 3 to 5 inches of new snow there, as opposed to the Kuskokwim Delta, looking for about an inch there, mostly along the coastline, but 3 to 5 inches with the 35 mile an hour winds, Bristol Bay, reducing visibilities down to quarter mile or less, maybe even whiteout conditions. That's through the day tomorrow and into early evening tomorrow night, Monday night. Otherwise, off to the east there, you can see a yellow shaded area north of Juneau. That's a wind chill advisory, and that's for the Klondike Highway for tonight until about 9 a.m. on Monday for strong north winds gusting 60 miles an hour in some locations, and the colder temperatures down in the single numbers, 0 to 10 above. So look for wind chills of 35 degrees below zero in that area there. And moving on to taking a look at the upper air chart, 18,000 foot wind flow chart showing a couple of cold upper lows, one over the Arctic there north of the Central Arctic coast, another one more or less over the southeast interior Copper River Basin, stronger one there off the south coast of the Panhandle, kind of moving southward, and that's taking the snow showers with it. So the snow's been tapering off and ending from north to south there over the southeast coast today as the colder Arctic air pushes in and those gusty north winds. Otherwise, you can see ridging out over the Bering Sea up into the Russian Far East, and that's pulling that cold air. You can see the flow coming down out of the Arctic there from Wrangel Island into the interior areas. And then back to the west of there, east of Kamchatka, a pretty good upper level low with a strong storm system there with southerly flow, warmer temperatures around that. Next frame here shows the flow chart for tomorrow, and you can see it becomes a little more westerly across southern Alaska, still northwesterly. And the northern half of the state still under the influence of the cold upper low, but starting to get a little more milder westerly flow developing now across southern Alaska. The upper low off the southern Panhandle continues to drop southward, and the ridge edging east a little bit there, and the southerly flow now into the western southwest Bering Sea. That's going to be advancing eastward, and it looks like south to southwest flow will make its way into the eastern Bering Sea late Tuesday, and we'll be looking at that entering the south, or making landfall, southerly flow on the west coast as that whole pattern shifts eastward from west to east, probably by early Wednesday. It'll be on the west coast, and then by Thursday, it looks like we'll have that southwest flow across all of interior Alaska, and that'll mean, of course, a lot warmer temperatures with a better chance of some widespread snowfall in areas. So definitely end of the cold snap, current cold snap coming up here during the middle and latter part of the upcoming week. And on the satellite imagery, you can see the circulation off the Panhandle shifting southward, and that's going to take the snow showers with it as the colder air comes in from the Yukon Northwest Territories on those north and northeast winds. That's been going on all day today, Out to the west, you can see the frontal system of that storm and the front past Shimia with rain and wind and actually some showers out there improving a little bit, and the precipitation pushing into the AKwx area in the southwest Bering, as well as light snow now starting to show up over the eastern Aleutians, Pribilof Island areas, otherwise just cirrus coming over the top of the ridge between the frontal boundary and then the trough over the eastern part of the state. And you can more or less see the cloudiness from about the Alaska Range northward there, giving areas of light snow, anywhere from just a trace to maybe an inch of light snow in areas, again, from the Alaska Range northward to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And good clearing, though, over south central Alaska. Gusty north winds as well. Panhandle already, Eldred Rock seeing in Lynn Canal seeing north winds gusting to 60 miles an hour. Cape Spencer on the north coast of the Panhandle seeing northeast winds up to 56 miles an hour for peak wind gusts. Wind gusts not quite as strong in Kodiak, but they did have at the state airport still had a peak wind gust of 51 miles per hour. And let's see, Valdez seeing northeast winds gusting 53 miles an hour today, and anywhere from 25 to 35 miles an hour over south central Alaska, Susitna Valley, Anchorage International Airport, areas of the Kenai Peninsula like Kenai and Akiski and those areas. And rolling this through again, you can see the whole pattern starting to make a push to the east there. It's going to take a couple of days before that milder southwest flow, as I mentioned, reaches the southwest coast and into the interior. By the middle of latter part of next week, or the upcoming this week, it definitely will see a significant warming trend. And on the chart today, very tight gradient. Again, windy conditions, Alaska Range eastward and across south central Alaska, Copper River Basin into the northern Panhandle. And then north of the mountains there, kind of some upslope light snow going on the north side of the central and eastern Alaska Range, with areas of light snow all the way up around Fairbanks. I believe the light snow finally ended there. Temperature at 3 p.m. about 26 below zero, with still cloudy skies. If it clears out there, it'll probably drop significantly. But clouds and wind, eastern Arctic coast, that'll be improving later tonight. Clearing very cold. Temperatures remain well below zero into the afternoon over the western interior areas. And then the increasing gradient there, south to north flow, bringing the light snow into the Fox Islands, Pribilofs, increasing winds, warming temperatures, and then mostly just rain and rain showers and gusty southwest winds over the western central Aleutians. And for tonight, kind of a new wave breaks off and pushes just north of the Fox Islands. And the warm front, snow changes to rain there, and still looking at snow and blowing snow for the Pribilof Islands. Temperatures rising up toward freezing after midnight tonight, and snow maybe making landfall, definitely for Nunivak Island toward morning, just grazing the coastline, Cape Newenham, and maybe the Yukon Delta coast late tonight or toward morning. Otherwise, gusty west winds, west-southwest winds, showers over the western Aleutians. Very cold night, temperatures anywhere from 20 to 45 below central western interior. And the clear areas, a little milder there, not quite so far below zero where the clouds and flurries linger, like north of the Alaska Range, upper Tanana Valley, northward across Yukon Flats into the eastern North Slope and along the Arctic coast. Windy, cold temperatures, northern Panhandle, but notice it's dry across the entire area there. The showers have ended. Look for some clearing, and probably not quite as many clouds as what I've got drawn on there for the northern Panhandle. It'll be mostly clear across much of the area there after midnight and in toward tomorrow. And for tomorrow, we're looking at virtually clear skies, cold temperatures, windy conditions, especially north for the southeast coast there. Temperatures probably staying below freezing most areas, well below freezing to the north. And increasing chance of light snow with a weak trough there along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound late in the day. That's just a possibility there into Prince William Sound, but definitely look for an increase in the clouds. And same thing for southern Cook Inlet. Kodiak Island flow reverses southeast now, or east-southeast, and increasing chances of snow. Temperatures on the upswing. Snow blowing snow, blizzard warning again, Bristol Bay and the coastal areas of the Kuskokwim Delta. Yukon Delta not as bad, but look for some snow there with easterly winds, maybe 15 to 25 miles an hour. Same thing for St. Lawrence Island late in the day, rain and snow, or snow changes to rain for the Pribilofs, as well as the Alaska Peninsula, a break for the Adak-Atka area. And the day Tuesday, Next front pushes in wind and rain, the Pribilofs, chance of snow into the southwest interior. Still cold over interior Alaska, chance of snow Copper River Basin. Northeast interior areas still dry, but increasing clouds and warming temperatures for the Panhandle. Lows tonight, 41 below zero, northern Kuskokwim Valley, minus 27, say towards Sleep Mute, and 20 to 25 below for Bristol Bay near 10 Kodiak Island, and 5 below to 25 below for south central Alaska, near 30 below in the Copper River Basin. Single numbers northern Panhandle near 30 in the south. Highs tomorrow, 30 for the southern Panhandle, not much difference from your lows tonight, and lower teens in the north, staying below zero over interior Alaska. Lows Tuesday morning, still 18 at Kodiak, and 25 to 30 below Copper River Basin, Kuskokwim Valley, and maybe falling below zero, Haines to Skagway, near 7 for Juneau, and lower to mid-teens elsewhere over the Panhandle, followed by highs finally above zero there in Bristol Bay, and 5 to 15 above for south central Alaska. And up to the north, well below zero, 25 to 45 below for your overnight lows. Highs tomorrow in the minus 20s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to the flying weather, first graphic here Monday morning, marginal VFR, North Slope Arctic Coast, and some along the Yukon River there from the Yukon Flats and north of the White Mountains, and over toward Tok Northway, maybe Delta, though, some marginal VFR possible. Otherwise, good VFR most of interior Alaska down to Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast. Marginal VFR around Fognac Island and pushing up toward Cape St. Elias. Panhandle VFR. And that band of IFR, the next storm, pushing eastward across the Pribilofs, eastern Aleutians, and advancing east-northeast along the Alaska Peninsula, with marginal VFR making landfall on the west side of Nunivak Island by morning, and then mostly marginal behind the front there, southwest Bering and the western Aleutians. And for the afternoon, Monday afternoon, you can see the IFR band makes a pretty good jog to the east-northeast across Bristol Bay right into the southwest coast. Still south of St. Lawrence Island, and back edge right on the Pribilofs, and marginal VFR for the Aleutians, and then another system brings another round of IFR into the far western Aleutians, stays marginal for the North Slope and Arctic coast. VFR, interior Alaska, but increasing marginal VFR in North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, looks like even into the possibly southern Copper River Basin, but solid VFR, ceilings visibility is unlimited for the Panhandle. And that continues into Tuesday morning also for the southeast coast, interior Alaska, VFR, North Slope, Arctic coast, marginal VFR, some IFR along the eastern Brooks Range, and marginal VFR, Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, and Matanuska Valley, marginal VFR, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, and most of the Aleutians with some areas of VFR thrown in, IFR, Central Bering Sea down to St. Paul, probably St. George as well, and down into areas just west of Adak. And then that area shifts eastward by Tuesday afternoon, and you see VFR breaking out for Adak, back to Chimionat 2 with IFR for Atka, St. Paul, St. George Island, up to the south coast of St. Lawrence Island, and along the Yukon Delta coast, including Nunivak Island, all IFR. Good VFR interior Alaska, a narrow band of IFR in the north side of the Brooks Range, otherwise marginal VFR on out to the Arctic Ocean. Marginal VFR areas of eastern interior from just north of Eagle down across the upper Tanana Valley, Copper River Basin, into northeast Prince William Sound to about Yakutat, but the Panhandle stays VFR as well as Kodiak Island. Passes VFR Anatuvik, possible marginal VFR northern entrance on both Anatuvik and Adigan, otherwise not too bad. VFR to the south. Lake Clark and Merrill, good VFR day coming up for Monday, same thing for Rainy. Windy VFR. Isabel VFR, Mantesta, same forecast. Good VFR flying all along the Alaska Range tomorrow. Tanita, VFR, the Matanuska Valley there, VFR. And for Portage, VFR, look for possible lowering conditions becoming maybe marginal on the eastern approach late in the day. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, big push of warm air coming up northward and especially advancing eastward. We've got 8,000 feet there, 6,000 to 10,000 feet coming into the eastern Aleutians, and the surface back to around the Pribilofs now. In fact, the warmer air aloft kind of overriding that cold air and getting east and northeast of the surface line there, and then down across Dixon Entrance, so pretty cold across all of interior Alaska and the Panhandle. Icing Look for increasing considerable moderate rime icing pushing up towards southwest Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise isolated moderate on the increase across southwest Alaska, Bristol Bay, and then also another round coming into the far western Aleutians. Jet stream, upper ridge shifting eastward, and that cold northerly flow now eastern Gulf right along the panhandle there as the upper low pulls into western Canada. So 155 knots there off the southeast coast. Southwest flow 80 to 100 knots now pushing into Bristol Bay, and 105 knots southwest flow for the western Aleutians. 9,000 feet, 80 knots from the southwest coming into the western Aleutian areas, and then northwest on the other side of the ridge, 55 to 65 knots with the eastern Aleutians. Light flow at 9,000 feet across all of interior Alaska. And turbulence, look for considerable moderate mechanical turbulence, Prince William Sound into the northern panhandle, and considerable moderate chop for St. Lawrence Island, Nunivak Island, and from Adak and Atco westward to Shimmy and Attu. And then with that system pulling up toward Kodiak, maybe some light to isolated moderate chop. And otherwise, interior Alaska looking pretty good to the Arctic coast. And after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with the National Weather Service with another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining me today are not just one, but two people, both with the last name Stevens, which is even more fun, but no relation. We have Eric Stevens from GINA and George Stevens, who is a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Awesome. And today you guys brought a really cool toy, or I should say tool, with you. It's a sandbox, but why are you guys working on a sandbox?
Well, it's part of our senior design project, and we were approached by EPSCoR to build this for them. They had a proof of concept that they developed about a year ago, I think, and they wanted a more robust version that they could pack onto a plane and take places, and it's a handy learning tool for kids and adults.
So you're a mechanical engineering student. You've built a traveling sandbox for the experimental program to stimulate competitive research, EPSCoR, and GINA's facilitated this. But why do we need a traveling sandbox?
Well, the prototype was such a big hit that they decided they wanted another one, actually two, that that would be easier to travel with, possibly marketable even.
Okay, so this is a traveling sandbox that's got a lot of bits and pieces and a computer hooked up to it. What is the computer doing with the sand?
The computer actually uses a Kinect sensor to read the topography of the sand or the shape of the sand, and then the computer translates that into information which it projects using a projector onto the sand, showing topographical lines and which is representative of the shape of the sand.
Okay, so this is a live mapping tool?
Yeah. It's interactive. As you're moving your hands through it, it is actively following and changing the lines to fit what you're doing.
That sounds like something I could have in my backyard.
Yep.
It'd be a lot of fun. So you guys had to change the design a little bit to make this more Alaska-fied, right?
Yeah.
Okay, how'd you do that?
Well, the original was made out of basically lumber and Simpson strong tie type stuff, and we rebuilt it to make it lighter and basically more transportable. We can pack it down to a fairly small size, and it can be loaded onto a plane and flown anywhere in the state.
Which you guys did today. And you have plans to take this in other places of Alaska, right?
Yep, we're actually going to be headed down to Homer with it later today.
Okay, very good. Eric, how does this fit into science learning around Alaska?
Well, you know what? I think it is a tool and it is a toy. And it brings out a smile from an 8-year-old and the smile from a 48-year-old with that inner 8-year-old wanting to get out. The sandbox, it's an interactive learning tool that teaches us how topography in the 3 dimensions is related to, say, a 2-dimensional map. More about that later. Just like George was saying, it's got a Kinect sensor, not just for video games anymore. It can sense out the lay of the land there, feeds that information in the computer. Computer identifies that, sends a signal to a projector to send topographic lines to map over that lumpy ground. So you get a 3-dimensional topo map out of it. And my favorite thing about it, this is the thing that stops people at the trade show, they stop at your booth and don't leave, is that you run your hand through that sandbox and it responds in real time. It remaps the topography as you get to be Mr. Tectonic Plate Drifter there. You can make things how you want. Well, what if we made a really high mountain here and a low valley there, and the lines adjust to what you did? It's a learning tool because it shows you that connection between these two-dimensional topo lines and what's really out in Alaska. And Alaska's a place with all kinds of topography. You know, we're from the Great Plains, where topo maps tend to be just like blank pieces of paper, but Alaska is particularly gifted in this regard, and this tool helps us, I think, learn more about our state, really.
Absolutely. And so this is going to enhance STEM learning, the science, technology, engineering, and math, in many different locations around Alaska. Then this would be something that kids and teachers can get their hands on.
It sure is. And I mentioned the it's like fly paper at a booth that, or at the Science Potpourri when we had Greg's original version of this sandbox, and that one was made out of scraps of wood, and it was a prototype. But even that one, before it had some of the refinements that George and crew have made for this newer, upscaled, maybe a 2.0 version of the sandbox, even that one was so attractive to people. It just demonstrated that this has potential to be a learning tool, an outreach tool, an education tool that now is portable and can go places in Alaska. Of course, there's only one sandbox, can't be everywhere at once, but hopefully it gets out there, gets the word out about EPSCoR and what science is being done here for Alaskans.
All right, that sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to get my hands in the sand and try this out for myself. We're going to demonstrate this here in our next segment of Alaska Weather Facts, but before we go, we want to remind you that EPSCoR, which is a new acronym for me now, but I'm going to remember this because you can follow them on Facebook and Twitter, and I invite you to do that. Alaska EPSCoR is also something that facilitates science learning at the University of Alaska around the state, and that stands for Experimental Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. So check that out, and make sure you tune in tomorrow because we're going to have the next version where we actually get our hands in the sand and check out how this works and demonstrates that topography. So for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you again next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Coastal water forecast. Small craft advisories for the south coast of the Panhandle. North winds 25 knots, seas around 11 to 12 feet. And then east-northeast winds 20 to 25 knots for the north coast and seas under 10 feet there. Gale warnings, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, northern inner channels. North wind sustained at 40 knots. Storm force gust to 55 knots. Seas at about 8 feet. Small craft advisory, Stevens Passage. Cold north winds at 30 knots with 6-foot seas, and Clarence Strait, lighter northerly winds at 20 knots, but seas up to about 7 feet. And moving ahead to Tuesday, we'll see that winds swing around direction there. Southeast 20 knots on the south coast, with east-southeast winds 20 to 25 knots for the north coast. Seas the entire stretch of the coastline there at about 7 feet. Central southern inner channels, north winds 15 knots with 4-foot seas, and winds coming down a little bit there for the northern inside waters. Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, north 30 knots with 6-foot seas. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, Monday, small craft advisories, north winds 25 knots, 4-foot seas. Eastern North Gulf Coast around Middleton Island, northeast winds at 25 knots with 7-foot seas, and 20-knot northeast winds. Western North Gulf Coast, gale warnings though for the Barren Islands, north at 35, and northeast winds 35 knots for Kamishak Bay. Small craft advisories for Southern Cook Inlet, northeast winds 30 knots, but north of the Forelands, winds will be much lighter and more easterly at about 10 knots. And moving on to Tuesday, Northern Cook Inlet, light winds continue northeast at about 10 knots. Small craft advisory south of the Forelands for north winds at 25. Small craft advisories also for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, where winds will be northwest at 30 knots. North Gulf Coast, north winds 20 knots, and a light northeast breeze for Prince William Sound at 10 knots with slight seas. Kodiak Island, northeast winds 20 knots for Shelikof Strait. Otherwise, winds will be southeast at 15. The Alaska Peninsula, gale warnings. Southeast winds increasing to 35 knots, seas building to around 10 feet. Northeast winds increasing to 35 knots for gale warnings for Bristol Bay as well, with seas at about 5 feet. And for Tuesday, Bristol Bay, winds come down to 20 knots from the northeast, and south winds 25 knots for the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, and southwest winds 20 knots for the Pacific side. Otherwise, Castle Cape to Sitkinak, that'll be the lightest wind area there with northwest wind at 15. Small craft advisories for Kodiak Island, northwest winds 25 knots with some higher gusts, seas running 4 to 8 feet. Storm warnings for the western Aleutians tomorrow from Kiska to Shimia, south winds 50 knots, and gale warnings for Amchitka Island, southwest at 40 knots. Minimum gales in the forecast for Adak and Atka, west-southwest winds 35 knots. Unmak Island, west winds 30 to 35 knots. On Alaska Island, southwest 30 to 40 knots. Seas for the eastern Aleutians running 10 to 14 feet. And for Tuesday, south to southwest winds 30 to 35 knots for the Fox Islands, Adak and Atka and Amchitka Islands, southwest at 40, Kiska to Shimia, southwest winds 35 knots. Southwest coast, gale warnings, east winds 40 knots, northeast winds 40 knots for St. Lawrence Island, east 45 knots for St. Matthew Island, south winds 40 knots for the Pribilofs. And for Tuesday, Pribilof, south winds 30 knots, storm warnings for St. Matthew Island, northern Bering Sea, southeast winds 50 knots, and small craft advisories for the southwest coast where winds will be east at 30 knots, and St. Lawrence Island looking at a 40-knot wind right out of the east. For the central and western Beaufort Sea coast, west-southwest breeze at 10 knots. From Cape Beaufort to Wales, winds will be north 10 to 15 knots, and west-southwest 10 to 15 knots for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Outlook for Tuesday, light winds from the north and northeast for the central and eastern Arctic coast at 5 to 10 knots, northeast at 15 for the western Arctic coast, Cape Beaufort to Wales, northeast or north-northeast at 20 knots. For tonight, flurries continue eastern Arctic coast down into the upper Tanana Valley area and about the upper Chena location. Otherwise clear and cold, very cold over the central and western interior down to Bristol Bay, south central Alaska, temperatures falling well below zero. Windier and colder for the northern panhandle and cooler and drier for the south. Snow and blowing snow for the Alaska Peninsula, and that'll increase along the southwest coast late tonight and be warmer and milder with areas of rain and showers over the Aleutians and southwest Bering Sea areas. And then for the day on, let's see, for Monday, look for more snow in the southwest.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.